Okay, let's dive in. We're talking about Aristotle today, uh, one of the absolute giants of Western thought. I mean, his ideas shaped everything for centuries: logic, biology, physics, you name it.
Absolutely. His influence is just immense.
But here's the kicker, the real paradox we're starting with. We often think of Aristotle as, shaping cosmology, our understanding of the universe. But he actually rejected the whole idea of cosmology as a science. He didn't think it was a valid thing to study in the first place.
Yeah, it's more than just a paradox, really. It was a deliberate philosophical strategy. And what's so fascinating, I think, is just how precise he was about it.
Precise how?
Well, he wasn't just saying, here's my different model of the universe. No, he was actually engaged in like a full-scale demolition project. He wanted to completely dismantle the core words, the vocabulary, the assumptions.
The whole foundation.
Exactly. The very object of study used by everyone before him. The Pythagoreans, the atomists, even his own teacher, Plato. For Aristotle, the kind of science these thinkers were doing, studying the cosmos, the world's origin, that whole enterprise was just flawed from the get-go.
That's such a radical starting point, especially when you think about how much we rely on origin stories today, even in science.
It really is.
So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to kind of step back into ancient Greece, into the 4th century BCE, and try to understand his thinking, his strategy. Why did he just toss out these concepts that had defined physics for ages?
Concepts like cosmokoia.
Right, the idea of the world being created.
And diakosmesis.
The idea of multiple worlds, yeah. Why did he reject those? And maybe more importantly, how did he manage to replace these big narratives with his own very different kind of science? This singular eternal universe explained by what he called the science of nature, or physis.
And to do that, we really need to dig into the arguments, the technical stuff in his big works like Peri Armenu, On the Heaven, and bits of the metaphysics.
Okay.
Because Aristotle's whole move was to shift the conversation completely away from external causes, like a creator god popping up, or random atoms bumping into each other.
Right.
And instead focus entirely on internal, intrinsic causes, how things move and change naturally based on what they are. It's a really sophisticated reframing of what it even means to study the physical world.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. Vocabulary. Aristotle was a master of definitions, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
So if he's rejecting the whole science of the cosmos, which you said meant both order and world, what words did he use instead to talk about, everything, all of reality?
He very deliberately avoids using cosmos in a central role. I mean, cosmos was the word for the Pythagoreans, the atomists, the Stoics, Plato. It was fundamental to their systems.
But Aristotle found it problematic.
Yeah, exactly. Too loaded. As you said, it implied order, which wasn't the main issue, but crucially, it was tangled up with creation stories, origin myths.
The very things he wanted out of science.
Precisely. He wanted to eliminate that whole way of thinking from natural philosophy.
So he needed different terms.
Yeah.
More neutral terms, less baggage.
Exactly right. He preferred 3 main alternatives, and they signal a different approach, moving away from this idea of an ordered arrangement to simply describing all that exists.
Okay, what were they?
So there's Hoderanos, often translated as the heaven, but for Aristotle, it meant much more the whole celestial sphere and everything inside it.
Got it.
Then there's Tuhalon, which just means the whole.
Simple enough.
And to Pan, meaning the totality. See, these terms just define a boundary, what's included. They don't imply a starting point or a creation event.
Okay, I get avoiding the word cosmos.
Yeah.
But why is switching the word such a big deal? How is that like a declaration of scientific independence?
Because it completely redefines the subject matter. His science isn't pericosmo about the cosmos. It's hor perifusis episteme.
The science concerning nature.
The science concerning nature. That's the crucial split. For Aristotle, studying the universe, the Uranos, is just a part of studying physis nature itself, defined as that internal source of movement and rest in things.
Ah, so the study of the universe flows out of the study of nature. It's not a separate thing about the universe's origin.
Exactly. His big claim is, look, no argument in my physics actually depends on some grand theory of cosmos. It's the other way around. Any talk about cosmic order has to depend on my prior account of physis an veranos.
So if you understand how basic things work, like earth and fire and the stars,
then you automatically understand the structure of the whole thing. You don't need a separate story about how it all got put together. That's why the word cosmos barely appears in his main physics texts, except when he's talking about other people's ideas he's rejecting.
wow. That reframing is subtle, but it's, yeah, it's devastating to the old way of thinking. It means he's not just disagreeing with Plato's Timaeus. He's saying the very questions Plato was asking were the wrong questions.
That's exactly it. And to really make that stick, he had to be super clear about what his main term, Uranos, actually meant, to show just how comprehensive it was. It's not just the sky, it's everything.
Right, and you mentioned he defined this in Peri-Orno, on the heaven. He gave it 3 different senses.
Yes, in Book 1, Chapter 9, he lays it out very carefully to show that Uranos covers every level of reality. They're kind of nested definitions building up to the whole picture.
Okay, what's the first sense?
The first sense of Uranos is the actual substance of the outermost sphere, the sphere of the fixed stars, the absolute edge, the boundary of the physical world.
So that defines the container, the limit.
Precisely. Everything that is physically is inside this rotating sphere. If you're outside it, well, for Aristotle, there is no outside, no void, no other stuff. That's the absolute limit.
Got it. Boundary established. What about what's inside?
Okay, the second sense is the body that's continuous with that outer sphere. So this includes the spheres that carry the moon, the sun, the planets, basically the moving parts of the heavens.
Kind of like the solar system, roughly.
Yeah.
But defined by its motion.
Exactly, defined by that unique, eternal, circular motion of the special fifth element, the ether. This is the superlunary realm, the stuff above the moon.
And the third sense must be the big one then, the all-encompassing one.
Yes, the third sense is the most sweeping. It's simply all body included within the extreme circumference. This is where Uranos becomes totally synonymous with to holon, the whole, and to pan, the totality. It is the universe.
Yeah, okay.
And defining it this way is crucial because it ensures that the study of the heaven, in this big third sense, is the study of everything physical. There's no room left over for anything outside to mess with it, create it, or destroy it.
This is where, as you said, the deep dive into the words really matters. Our sources mentioned a subtle difference between Aristotle's term for structuring and the word his rivals used.
Ah, yes. This is classic philosophical nitpicking, but with huge consequences. So other thinkers like pseudo-Aristotle or the Stoic Chrysippus, they often use the word systema. It means structure or system. And they might define cosmos as the systema consisting of Uranos and Earth.
Right, putting Uranos and Earth on the same level as key parts of the structure.
Exactly. It kind of naturally centers the Earth, makes it a co-equal partner in the cosmic setup, which then gives the Earth and maybe humanity a lot more significance in the grand scheme.
But Aristotle uses a different word.
He uses systasis, which is more like the act of structuring or constitution, and he defines the cosmos as the systasis of the whole is cosmos and Uranos. But remember, his Uranos in that third big sense already includes the Earth.
So he doesn't need to mention Earth separately.
Right, because in his view, the Earth is just this tiny, almost insignificant point right at the center. It's the place where things are generated and decay, sure, but it's a vanishingly small part compared to the vast eternal heavens.
So he minimizes the Earth's importance just by choosing a broader word for the whole thing. That's clever.
It's brilliant philosophical maneuvering. By making Uranos the single, all-encompassing term for everything, he philosophically shrinks the Earth down. The real action, the eternal defining part of reality, is the perfect, ceaseless motion of the heavens. And this definition, this structure, walls off his universe. No room for an outside creator, no room for an external void, no room for other worlds. It's philosophically sealed.
Okay, so he set the stage with his terminology. Now let's move to the next big step. Dismantling cosmopoeia.
Cosmology.
The whole idea of origin stories or creation accounts, you said he saw this as basically a pseudoscience.
Yeah. His hostility is pretty total. For Aristotle, any question about how the cosmos was created or generated, it always has to be pushed back to a more fundamental question about nature, about physis.
How so?
Well, if something exists, it has to be governed by its internal principles, its nature, which dictates how it moves or rests. If you claim it was generated, you have to show the natural reason or necessity for that generation. And for something like the entire universe, which he argues is eternal, that's impossible.
And he didn't just argue against it dryly, did he? He used some pretty sharp rhetoric, even mockery.
Oh, definitely. We have accounts like from Philo of Alexandria where Aristotle is basically ridiculing people who believe the universe was generated. This was often aimed squarely at Plato's story in the Timaeus.
What did he say?
He joked that these thinkers treated the great visible God, that's the cosmos, as if it were no better than the work of human hands. Like it was just some artifact someone built.
Wow, calling the universe a great visible God, but then slamming the idea it was handmade. That's a direct shot at Plato's demiurge, the craftsman god.
It absolutely is. It frames the whole idea of cosmogony as being, well, fundamentally disrespectful to the universe's inherent majesty and order. He even used this almost comical line saying he used to worry about normal things, like his house being destroyed by winds.
Okay.
But now, he said, he feared philosophers who destroy the entire cosmos by argument.
So arguing that the universe had a beginning is like arguing for its destruction.
That's the implication. It makes the universe seem unstable, temporary, transient. And for Aristotle, stability and eternity are absolutely necessary for something to be the subject of true science.
Why is that?
Because if the universe itself, the biggest thing there is just temporary if it was generated and therefore could perish, then natural science can't achieve real universal knowledge. True knowledge, for him, has to be about eternal truths, not fleeting things.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's see how he applies this strategy to specific predecessors. What about Anaxagoras and his idea of nous, or intellect? Anaxagoras said intellect was the cause that brought order to the cosmos. Aristotle initially praised this, right?
He did, yeah. In the Metaphysics, he says Anaxagoras seemed like a sober man compared to the idle talk of his predecessors.
I praise.
Because Anaxagoras had at least grasped two key things, that there's matter and that there needs to be some source of movement or order, which Anaxagoras called nous, intellect. It seemed like a big step up from just saying everything is, water or air.
But the praise didn't last. The critique came next.
Right, the praise was definitely conditional. The big criticism was that Anaxagoras didn't really use nous properly. Aristotle accused him of basically using intellect as a convenient plot device, a deus ex machina.
How so?
He said Anaxagoras only brought nous into the picture as a device for his creation of the cosmos, and only mentioned it when he was totally at a loss to say by what cause something necessarily is.
The god of the gaps.
Yeah.
Argument, essentially using this big external concept just to plug the holes in your explanation.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of explaining things through their physis, their nature.
Exactly. It shows a system that doesn't have real explanatory power built in. If the universe needs this external intelligence muse to step in only when the explanation gets tricky, like why are things arranged this way, then parts of the universe don't have a strong enough internal nature, a physis, to explain their own structure and movement. For Aristotle, a proper science of nature has to be self-contained. The order we see has to be a necessary result of the natures of the things themselves, not something imposed from outside by a cosmic mind whenever the scientist gets stuck.
Okay, so that shifts the focus completely. It's not about why it was created, but how its parts move according to their nature. Now, what about the Pythagoreans? They had this whole system linking math and music to the cosmos, seeing the universe as a kind of harmony, a number.
Yeah, the Pythagoreans were trying to find a rational order, which Aristotle certainly appreciated in principle. But their big mistake, according to him in the Metaphysica, was a fundamental error in thinking. It's just absurd, he says, to attribute generation coming into being to things that are eternal, like the universe or mathematical truths.
So you can't have an origin story for something that lasts forever.
That's his point. He says the Pythagoreans are fundamentally flawed because, and I quote roughly here, they are creating a cosmos, cosmopeusi, and trying to speak naturalistically, so they're trying to sound like scientists.
Right.
But they are forcing appearances to fit their opinions rather than seeking causes directed toward appearances.
Okay, forcing appearances to fit their opinions. Can you give me an example of what he meant by that? How are they doing that?
Well, they'd start with these, beautiful mathematical ideas, like the Tetractes, the idea that the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, summing to 10, hold the key to the universe's structure. 10 is the perfect number.
Okay.
So when they looked at the heavens, they expected to find 10 moving bodies. But they could only easily see 9, sun, moon, the 5 known planets, the Earth itself, and the sphere of stars. So what do?
They fudged it.
They hypothesized a 10th body, the counter-Earth, orbiting the central fire opposite the Earth, always hidden from view. They literally invented a planet to make reality fit their mathematical theory.
Instead of adjusting the theory based on what they saw?
Exactly. And that, for Aristotle, is the core problem with all cosmogony. Whether it's Plato's demiurge, Anaxagoras' nous, or the Pythagoreans' numbers, if you start with an idea about how the universe must have been generated, you inevitably end up getting the scientific method backward. You impose your story onto nature instead of letting nature's principles, physis, dictate your explanation. It leads to weak, unnecessary, or just plain made-up causes.
Got it. So the foundation has to be an ungenerated, eternal universe, which leads us directly to his own arguments for why the universe must be eternal and indestructible.
Yes. Fragment 19b really captures this. He argues the Ouranos is ungenerated and indestructible by using this distinction between natural order and unnatural order, hyperaphusin taxis.
Okay, we need to unpack that distinction.
Yeah.
Natural versus unnatural order.
Right. So perishability, decay, destruction, these things only happen when there's unnatural order. Think about something in our world, the sublunary sphere, like an animal or a plant. It's made up of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water. These elements are temporarily held together in a specific structure, the living body, but their natural tendency is to return to their own places. Earth wants to go down, fire wants to go up.
So the body is holding them in an unnatural arrangement.
In a sense, yes, it's a temporary arrangement. When the animal dies, the elements dislocate, they separate and go back to their natural places. That process of dislocation, that breakdown of the temporary structure, that's the unnatural order that leads to corruption and decay.
Okay, so things down here fall apart because their parts are being held away from their natural places.
Yeah.
How is the universe as a whole different?
The cosmos, meaning the whole Ouranos, the totality, is fundamentally different. Its main defining parts, especially the vast sphere of the heavens made of ether, are already situated according to nature.
How so?
The ether's nature is to move in a perfect, eternal circle. It's already doing exactly what its nature dictates. It can't be dislocated from its natural place or motion because its place is the outer boundary and its motion is eternal rotation. Since the biggest, most dominant part of the universe is already in its perfect natural state, there's no inherent source of disorder or decay for the universe as a whole.
Ah, so the mistake that cosmogonists make is thinking the whole universe works like things down here on Earth. It's an error of scale and bad analogy.
Precisely. Aristotle explicitly warns against this. Don't reason from the changes you see nearby. People being born and dying, weather changing, maybe even land masses shifting over long periods. Don't take those changes and assume the entire universe is subject to the same kind of generation and destruction.
Because the part where things decay is tiny compared to the eternal part.
It's vanishingly small. To apply the rules of decay that govern our little corner to the grand, eternal, perfect motions of the stars and planets is just a massive philosophical mistake. It leads you away from truth, away from understanding nature properly. It's almost like Protagorean relativism, taking the local and mistakenly making it universal. The cosmos has to be stable, eternal, and perfectly ordered. Otherwise, science itself becomes impossible.
Okay, so he's argued against creation stories. Now, what about the other big alternative? Plurality, diakosmesis, the idea of multiple worlds. This was the big idea of the atomists, right? Democritus and Leucippus.
Exactly. This is where Aristotle's very strict definition of Ouranos as the totality really comes into play as a weapon. The atomists imagined infinite atoms moving randomly in an infinite void outside our own Ouranos.
Which led them to conclude
that there must be infinite cosmoi, infinite worlds, constantly forming and dissolving as atoms randomly clumped together and then broke apart.
But Aristotle had already closed that door conceptually. By defining Ouranos as to pan, the totality, there is no outside for atoms or void to exist in.
He had. Logically, he'd already blocked that move. He flatly rejected the existence of anything, even empty space, void outside the Ouranos. If the Ouranos is the whole shebang, then there's simply no place, no matter, no possibility for another world to form. The boundary of his physics is the physical boundary of the one and only universe.
And just like with Anaxagoras, he didn't just reject the void, he also went after the atomists' explanation of why things happen, their theory of causation.
Yes, their explanation was just deeply inadequate for him. They basically said everything, generation and destruction, is just atoms moving around, separating and combining. Locomotion.
Okay.
But why do the atoms move? Why do they sometimes combine to form something ordered, like a world or a plant or an animal, instead of just bouncing around forever? Their answer was basically luck or spontaneity, chance.
And for Aristotle, chance is not a scientific explanation.
It's a catastrophic failure. Nature, physis, must be the intrinsic necessary source of motion and order. If you attribute the fundamental structure of reality, why planets orbit, why elements behave as they do to mere luck or random coincidence, then there's nothing necessary about it, nothing knowable, predictable, or repeatable in a scientific sense. It makes the cosmos itself just a fluke. And a weak cause, like chance, can only produce a weak effect, a flimsy cosmos. It's the total opposite of a science based on necessity.
Right. Now, here comes arguably Aristotle's most powerful weapon against plurality, the argument from natural place in motion. the reductio ad absurdum we find on the heaven. Let's walk through this carefully, because it's his core proof for why the universe has to be single.
Okay. Yeah, this argument is really elegant because it's purely logical. It just flows directly from the core principles of his physics, principles he believes everyone should accept.
What's the starting point?
The absolute foundation is this. Every simple fundamental body, earth, fire, air, water, has one and only one natural motion intrinsic to it. Earth naturally moves only towards the single geometric center of the totality. Fire naturally moves only away from that center towards the outer edge.
And this single center is like the absolute anchor point for the entire physical system.
It is the anchor. Everything is defined relative to it. Now, Aristotle says, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine there are multiple worlds, multiple cosmoi. Let's call them Cosmos A and Cosmos B. And let's assume they're similar in nature, made of the same elements, following the same basic physical laws.
Okay, two similar universes existing somehow.
Now, consider a piece of Earth in Cosmos A. Its nature dictates that it moves toward the center of Cosmos A. Let's call that center A. That's its natural motion.
Makes sense.
But if Cosmos B also exists, maybe nearby, and the laws of physics are universal, which they must be if the elements are the same, then that same piece of Earth in Cosmos A must also have a natural tendency to move towards the center of Cosmos B, center B, because it's Earth, and Earth naturally moves towards the center.
Wait, so a single piece of Earth now has two different places it naturally wants to go, center A and center B. That sounds like a problem.
It's not just a problem, it creates a logical impossibility. Imagine these two worlds are sort of next to each other. Take a particle of Earth right on the edge of Cosmos A, but facing towards Cosmos B.
Okay.
That particle is now being pulled naturally in two directions at once. Its nature drives it towards center A. Its nature also drives it towards center B.
So if it starts moving towards center B, what does that mean for its motion relative to its own center, center A?
It means it must be simultaneously moving away from center A, but moving away from the center is the definition of unnatural or forced motion for Earth. The natural motion is toward the center.
Okay, I see it.
So, the mere hypothetical existence of a second cosmos forces a fundamental element, like Earth, into a state where it's undergoing motion that is simultaneously natural, moving towards B center, and unnatural or constrained, moving away from A center.
And that's impossible.
It's absurd, according to Aristotle. A simple body cannot have a natural tendency to move in two opposite directions at the same time, and it cannot be undergoing both natural and unnatural motion simultaneously. Therefore, the premise that led to this absurdity, the existence of plural cosmoi, must be false.
Wow, that's an incredibly powerful argument built entirely on the logic of motion. He's basically ruled out the multiverse just by insisting that down means one specific direction for the element Earth.
It's a complete takedown based on internal consistency. He doesn't need to go looking for other worlds, which he couldn't do anyway. He proves the universe must be single based on the philosophical necessity of how things must move according to their intrinsic nature, all oriented towards one unique center.
And he had one more philosophical punch for the atomists, linking them with Plato again, using the idea of order versus disorder taxes versus acosmia.
Yes. On the heavens again, he groups them together, saying their fundamental mistake is starting with a generated world in the first place. For the atomists specifically, their starting point is infinite, disorderly motion of atoms in the void.
Right. Chaos precedes order.
But Aristotle turns this around. He says, look, if you define disorderly, atoktos, what does that mean? It means nothing other than contrary to nature, parafusin. Disorder is the unnatural state.
Okay.
So if the atomist's view were true, where ordered worlds randomly emerge from chaos, they'd be stuck with a huge contradiction.
Which is?
The contradiction is that the initial state, the chaos, the disorderly motion, would have to be considered in accordance with nature, since it's the default state, and the resulting order, the cosmos itself, would be merely a chance occurrence, and therefore contrary to nature.
So they'd be saying that chaos is natural and order is unnatural.
Exactly, which is impossible for Aristotle. Nature is the principle of order, taxes. The cosmos is the manifestation of that natural order. Therefore, order cannot arise from unnatural chaos by mere luck. The structure of the universe must be a necessary result of the natures of the things within it. The atomist premise of infinite random variation actually undermines the very possibility of explaining the ordered cosmos through nature.
So he's dismantled creation, he's dismantled plurality. Where does that leave us? What is the final picture of the Aristotelian universe?
It leaves us with his grand conclusion. The Uranos, the universe, must be one and unique and perfect heis kai monos kai teleos. It's this single perfect sphere, completely filled with matter, containing absolutely everything that exists. There's no outside, no void, no other worlds.
The ultimate steady-state model.
Exactly. Ungenerated, indestructible, eternal, no beginning, no end, just perfectly, eternally existing according to its nature.
Okay, that sounds incredibly self-contained. But if he rejected the atomist's idea of multiple worlds, how did he account for all the complexity and different structures within this one universe? Surely he acknowledged different regions or systems.
No, absolutely. He wasn't denying complexity within the single Uranos. While he rejected the atomist diakosmosis, plurality of worlds, he actually uses a similar term himself, sometimes, especially in the Meteorologica, to talk about the internal arrangements or structuring within the one universe.
So diakosmosis can also mean internal arrangement.
Yes, in his usage here, it's not about other worlds, but about how the one world is structured into different causally linked zones.
What are those zones?
He basically divides the universe into two major systems, which are distinct but continuous and interact causally. First, there's the realm of the heavens, the superlunary sphere, what he calls the cosmos around the upper motions. This is the realm of the eternal, unchanging ethereal bodies, stars, planets, sun, moon.
Okay, the perfect eternal part. And the second?
The second is our realm, the sublunary sphere, the whole cosmos around the Earth. This is the region of the four elements, earth, air, fire, water, the zone of change, generation, and corruption.
So his diakosmosis, his arrangement, is about how these two internal cosmoi relate to each other. How does the upper one affect the lower one?
The relationship is fundamentally causal and hierarchical. The lower cosmos, our world of change, is directly continuous with the upper motions, and he explicitly says all its power is derived from them.
How does that work? What power?
The constant, eternal, circular motion of the upper ethereal bodies, especially the sun moving through the ecliptic, is the ultimate engine driving all change down here.
Like the seasons.
Exactly. The sun's movement causes the cycle of seasons. The seasons, in turn, drive the generation and decay of living things, the transformation of the elements, like water evaporating into air, then condensing back, weather patterns, everything. The whole sublunary world is kept in motion, kept churning, by the influence of the perfect, unchanging motions above.
So the universe is unified because the heavens act as the continuous, ultimate cause of change for the earthly realm. It's all one connected system.
Perfectly connected, driven by the eternal necessity of that heavenly rotation. It's a completely self-contained, self-perpetuating system.
Which brings us back to his warning about scale. He had to keep hammering this point home, right? Don't assume the whole universe changes just because things change down here.
Yes, he's very clear on that. Don't look at small and trifling things, and for him, that includes things like the sea forming or mountains rising or weather changing. Don't look at those events happening in our tiny little sublunary sphere and infer that the whole universe is subject to that kind of transformation or eventual decay.
Because those are just local fluctuations.
Exactly. They're just temporary reshufflings of the elements within the small, changeable part of the cosmos. They tell you nothing about the fundamental nature of the vastly larger, eternal, unchanging, ethereal heavens. The overall cosmic order itself is stable and permanent.
Okay, so this huge philosophical victory, defining the universe as single, eternal, internally driven by nature, it had major consequences for what Aristotle thought science could actually know, didn't it? An epistemological consequence.
Yes, this is maybe the most profound outcome, the real cost, in a way, of his success. Aristotle firmly believed that true knowledge, episteme, scientific knowledge has to be about universals, general principles, repeatable patterns, unchanging forms.
Okay.
But the Uranos, the universe itself, in his model, is absolutely singular. It's unique. There's only one of it. It's a particular, concrete, material thing. It has a specific structure, a specific amount of matter.
So it's something we can perceive, it's sensible?
But because it's a unique individual, it's not in itself knowable in the way science requires. You can't have a science of a single, unrepeatable object. Science deals with kinds, with types, with universals.
So you can't really have a science of the universe in the way we think of cosmology now?
Yeah.
There's only one universe to study.
Pretty much. Since science needs general laws that apply to multiple instances, the singular universe itself can't be the primary object of natural science. So what does Aristotle do? His focus shifts.
You swear.
His physics, and especially his later work, concentrates not so much on the unique unknowns itself, but on the generic forms of natural things within the universe that are repeatedly generated. Things like the elements which transmute into each other, and, most importantly, living things.
Biology.
Exactly. Zoology, psychology, think about it. Species of animals and plants. The form of horse or oak tree is constantly instantiated, reproduced generation after generation. These forms are universals, realized repeatedly in matter. They are perfect subjects for scientific study for discovering eternal truths about their natures.
So in a weird way, he kind of solved the problem of cosmology by showing it was less scientifically accessible, less interesting perhaps, than biology.
You could put it that way. He provided such a compelling, closed system for the universe that the real scientific action shifted to understanding the eternal forms constantly repeating themselves within that unchanging cosmic stage.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Summing up Aristotle's strategy. He won the day, philosophically speaking, by throwing out cosmogony and plurality. He rooted everything in physis, the internal nature of things, and the doctrine of natural motion towards a single center. And that led him to this picture of a single, perfect, eternal universe, ordered from within.
Yes, he created this incredibly coherent, internally consistent system. It was a massive intellectual achievement. But as you said, that victory, that uncompromising stance, it definitely had what some later thinkers called unfortunate consequences for where science went next.
How so? What were the downsides?
Well, by completely rejecting the idea that the universe could have an origin, could have been generated, he effectively shut down a whole line of questioning that, ironically, is now central to modern science.
The idea that understanding the origin helps explain the present state.
Precisely. Modern science, cosmology, physics, even chemistry relies heavily on understanding the origin and evolution of the universe over billions of years to explain why things are the way they are now, why elements exist in certain abundances, why galaxies have the structure they do. It's all tied to the history, the genesis.
So Aristotle, by insisting on eternality, missed that whole evolutionary historical dimension.
He did. He forced science to understand the universe only through its present steady-state structure. He missed the power of developmental explanations that became so crucial later on.
And what about plurality?
Well, his proof of singularity, based on that single center for motion, locked physics into a finite Earth-centered sphere. It made it incredibly difficult, logically within his system, to even conceive of plurality in the way we do now. Other solar systems, other galaxies, far beyond what we can see. His physics just didn't allow for it because everything had to orient towards our center.
So his powerful definition of nature, designed to win the argument against the atomists, ended up limiting the scope of the universe he could imagine. Philosophical victory came at the cost of future scientific possibility.
That's a good way to put it. It really highlights the trade-offs in building such a complete and rigid system.
Okay, so we've seen Aristotle argue fiercely, logically, that the universe must be one, singular, eternal, based on how things naturally move towards a unique center. This brings us to a final, provocative thought for you, our listeners, to chew on.
Consider this. What if the fundamental principle of natural motion wasn't tied to a single, unique geometric center? What if instead you imagined universal laws of attraction, say, like gravity, that operate the same way everywhere, between any bodies, regardless of their position, relative to one specific center?
If you change that core premise of Aristotelian physics,
would his knockdown arguments against plurality, against infinite worlds, still work? Or, if you adopt a more universal view of physical laws, does the atomist's old idea of infinite cosmoi suddenly start to look more rational, perhaps even more scientific, than Aristotle's single, perfect, but ultimately finite sphere?
Something to think about.
Yeah.
Does changing the laws of motion reopen the door to the multiverse that Aristotle tried so hard to close?
Exactly. That's something for you to mull